What were some of those moments where you realized just the current model is not working? As you started your own thing and started doing marketing and supporting these organizations?
90% of the companies that I start working with, once we get into that discovery period and I start looking at their data, it's like all over the place. Out of the gate, step one is
Meet Robert Cain, owner of Automation Invasion, an automation strategist helping service-based businesses convert more leads, streamline operations, and scale smarter with AI.
it's important for me that whatever business owner I work with is just really transparent about what their goals are, right? It's like, what was your company revenue last year? What do you want it to be this year? If we work our way back from revenue, we can figure out what it's going to take in order to get to that revenue objective. I always like to position myself as sort of like this remote CMO. That gives me the ability to, number one, make marketing decisions, but also see what else is happening within the business so that I can help them to respond.
With AI, what have you seen changing in how clients are engaging with you? What have you started to see, and what do you imagine we'll continue to see as this becomes more and more adopted?
Obviously there's a lot of fear around AI. My perspective on it is make sure that
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Leaders of the Workplace of Tomorrow. I'm excited to have on Mr. Rob Cain with Automation Invasion. Rob and I have actually worked together for a few years, and it's exciting to see the success that he's having. So, Rob, kind of bring the audience up to speed. Tell us kind of your story and what's brought you to the point of where you're at right now.
Yeah, so started Automation Invasion about 3 years ago. I had originally formed an LLC back in like 2019 for some consulting stuff, and then really wanted to zero in on sort of the automation at scale for the businesses that I was working with. And so chose the alien theme because I've always been really into aliens. I was hoping that that would catch, but the more I started to work with the service-based industries, the more I realized like there's a little bit of a disconnect between like what they may be looking for and how I'm positioning my company. So since then, I've formed a couple of other DBAs under the LLC. So we currently have Lawn and Landscape Made Simple, which is co-op partnership with another consultant that I work with, Jason Nunemacher. He works specifically with like tree service businesses. He owns his own tree service business, has partnered on several others. As an aggregate in Phoenix, those companies together are doing upwards of 30 million a year together. So he's been a really great partner to have. And so that lawn and landscape made business side of things is really focused on working with lawn and landscape business owners, obviously. And then we're starting a new venture as well called Thank You for Calling.ai. Less we and more me, but this is really focused on agentic building for service-based businesses. And that's through SMS, web chat, voice conversations as well. And our goal really is to kind of like fill in that gap for those companies that maybe are short in the office or they're getting leads and they're missing them. It's always nice to have something on the back end of that phone, something or someone that's able to get the information that you're looking for and streamline that, lead acquisition process. So that's the short term.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you're helping tree and lawn care companies in converting more leads, right? And generating more business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just to kind of fill in a little bit more background information, when you and I were working together, specifically focused on Salesforce implementation for just a broad scope of clients, right? Like we're working with nonprofit wealth. I think that, helped me to learn a lot more about just business in general, but also like the gaps that were very common among these businesses within the industry and working as sort of like that solutions architect partner for those companies. You start to meet their vendors and the other people that they're working with. And I have a background in marketing as well. And so when I started to see some of these firms, marketing companies, and how there was kind of a disconnect between what the marketing company was doing and what the actual business owners could see that they were doing, sort of like had this epiphany that that's kind of a great foot in the door to kind of put that foot forward and say, okay, yeah, we can do your marketing. But once we get in there, we're going to find all of these other challenges that you're dealing with, and we're going to help you solve those challenges. And so, not a conventional, traditional marketing agency, but it is within our wheelhouse. And a lot of our solutions are very, marketing, like growth oriented type solutions that we're implementing for clients.
Some of those moments in the process as you started your own thing and started doing marketing and supporting these organizations, like what were some of those moments where you realized just like the current model is not working? Like what they're doing today is not working, and and help to really clarify your path to how you could help these organizations.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I recognize with every company that I've really worked with is like they don't have all the information. And, if we're talking about marketing budgets and, setting marketing budgets by campaign, the best way to do that is to look at historics, right? How much did we spend in the past? What did it do for us in terms of like revenue, in terms of like lead acquisition? And, the majority, I'd say 90% of the companies that I start working with, once we get into that discovery period and I start looking at their data, it's like all over the place. It makes it difficult for the business owner to be able to make decisions if they don't have that information. But out of the gate, step one is for me to help bring some clarity in with giving them what I can see and showing them what we can do to improve their current situation. Like our business models between you and I, like we're more likened to like the accounting side of the business in that like we're very analytical and the numbers don't lie, right? But like
Yeah.
accounting is just one part of it, right? You have all this other information within the business as well that tells a story. And if you have a question that you need answered in order to make a decision with your business and you don't have the data to tell that story, then you've got to figure out a way to get it. And so that's really been my objective with working with these companies.
We see that need to, and really like the need for organizations to think in outcomes and, what outcome are we trying to create with the solution, and are we actually making progress? And one thing that you've kind of shared with me and might be good to talk through is just how you're really vested in that customer's success, right? Like you're tracking those metrics and you're tracking the ROI, and you're presenting that back to them to where, like you mentioned, if they don't know where they're missing or where they're failing, you can't really get the feedback to ensure they're successful.
Yeah, 100%.
Take me through, how do you kind of, help those organizations see better, understand better, and ensure their investments actually paying off?
Yeah. So lawn, landscape, tree service companies, at the end of the day, when you're talking with these folks, like the number one question that I ask them, and it's important for me that whatever business owner I work with is just really transparent about what their goals are, right? It's like what was your company revenue last year? What do you want it to be this year? Right. And I don't get too caught up into the profit side of things because I don't want to get too involved with the financial side of the business. But if we work our way back from revenue, we can figure out what it's going to take in order to get to that revenue objective. Right. And so we use that historic data and we look at how did we get there last year and how do we incrementally improve what we're doing this year in order to get to that new target, right? And then you have the fulfillment side of things, which again, that goes back to the company owner. It's like, if I sell this much work and I actually fulfill that, then you get into like hiring challenges, like there's so many facets of the business that are impacted when it comes to getting to that revenue number that I always like to position myself as sort of like this like remote CMO, right? Or fractional CMO for the clients that I work with. And, that gives me the ability to like number one, make marketing decisions, but also see what else is happening within the business so that I can help them to respond. Right. And I think that relationship that I have with the business owners, where I'm meeting with them either weekly or biweekly, and we're reviewing the numbers and we hold one another accountable to those. And if marketing is going great, but we're not converting, I mean, that's, like, what's the problem there? Right. And so we can dig into that and figure that out. But, or if we've sold too much and we can't fulfill, now is this going to impact our online reputation, right? Like, so there's a lot of nuance, I think, that's involved in business growth, and having lived, a variety of companies has definitely helped me to better understand that and be able to respond more quickly to what the client's needs are.
Yeah, kind of, help us. I mean, you've talked on some of the execution side of things, but, for a client that begins to engage with you, like what does that process look like and how do you get involved? You mentioned the CMO type role, but like, what does that process look like and how do you engage and interact with them?
I'm not very like marketing intensive for my own agency because I'm still kind of ground level. I've got a small team underneath me. And also I realized that I don't want to provide that traditional agency experience. So it's not like, hey, like give us access and then let us do our thing. And then 6 months later, you're either happy with us or you're not, right? So for me, client acquisition and startup is kind of like a few phases, right? We have our sales calls. I immediately ask for access if there's some level of engagement there where there's interests on their part. I want to get into their CRM, right? Like CRM doesn't scare me. And my objective really is to start looking for those key performance indicators that are going to give us the information that we need so that I can help that client to determine what marketing and 2026 or 2027 should look like. I have a sort of dashboard that I build for my clients. It's a manual dashboard on a Google Sheet and I share it with them. The reason it's manual is because I want to fill it out weekly for the client so that we can audit those KPIs ourselves. And that's kind of a part of the service, right? It's like I'm looking at these numbers weekly. I'm accountable to these numbers weekly. And I also need to be able to speak to what's happening to them. And if I'm just like automating that data into a sheet, it's very easy to just kind of like give it a glance or forget about it, right? But to me, I think that's one of the key, like fundamental things that I've learned from working with organizations that implement EOS is like everybody on your team needs a number, right? Whether it's multiple KPIs or just at least one KPI, and they're accountable to that number. They bring that number to the table every week, and it's either an issue or it's not an issue, right? And that just creates so much visibility with those clients to where when I have those KPIs, those things that I'm responsible for, and I'm bringing them to them, like we can really eliminate these tensions, right? That sometimes companies have with contractors. It's like, and I don't know if you're doing a good job. And now there's no question about it.
Kind of talk through that commitment, with that organization. And, I think we see this as well, but the success, how dependent that success is on their commitment, right? And maybe some examples that you might have where you have clients that yes, they hire you, but then they aren't really engaged in the process to give you the feedback you need, and the difference between when you get in that engagement and when you don't.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's almost like an unspoken agreement when we first start working together. At least it is included in my proposal is that you do get either a weekly or biweekly meeting with me. It doesn't have to be the company owner. It doesn't have to be a manager. It needs to be somebody that, they need to have some decision-making ability, right? If they're meeting with me. And so like that commitment on their end, what that means for them is number one, like comfort in knowing that they have somebody sort of watching their back, right? As like a business advisor, looking at it from a different lens than maybe a coach or an accountant, right? But somebody that's lives or has lived in that sales seat, somebody that has lived in that marketing seat specific for a company. This is what I'm seeing. What challenge and a question that I ask every week is like how are things going, like what issues are you guys dealing with, right? It's a problem that we can solve with technology. Obviously I'm remote, I'm not in town, I'm not meeting with these clients on site, but if it is an issue that we can solve with technology or that I can assist with, that's that just creates for lack of a better term, like just stickiness, right? It's like not only am I doing the day-to-day like marketing side of things, but I'm also like helping to solution architect within your company to where we're creating an operating system together to help you become more efficient.
You're moving them forward. And then with that, as you interact with their people, like there's new ideas and new perspectives that further accelerate it forward. And that, to talk to that, like I know you've worked in all different types of verticals and industries. And one thing I appreciate with you is that diversity and perspective and experience. Can you explain, as you've interacted with these clients, like you've probably interacted with the CEO or the head of marketing or an end user, how do you view those different perspectives and where's the power and impact that comes from, meeting with various people, getting various insights and bringing those all together in your solution?
Yeah, definitely. So just kind of backfilling again, a little bit more background information. I feel very privileged to have been able to work in kind of the forefront of a lot of up and coming industries over the last, almost 30 years, which is sickening to say. But, when like digital cameras were coming out, I was working at a camera shop. When big screen TVs were like, just becoming dirt cheap. Like I was working at Fry's Electronics before I went bankrupt. And then at the advent of the iPhone, right, I was working in cellular and quickly became like a sales manager within the cellular industry. And, so like I've worked with all walks of life and I've dealt with all various types of customer facing type interactions. Right. And I think like this stigma behind the role that you're in right now and what you can become at a certain point is just like we're getting to an age where it just doesn't matter, right? Like I ended up finalizing or like finishing my bachelor's degree, I think when I was 30. It's a business degree, but I feel like, my approach to technology has really significantly helped my ability to like sort of be like that autodidactic learner and use technology as a tool to solve the problems that I was facing. Right. So after leaving like that retail sphere, like I wanted to become a marketer. I knew that I wanted to get into marketing. I really liked design. I really liked the creative space, but more than anything, I realized that I needed to learn a little bit more about business. And so, I was able to come on board as a marketing director for one of the bigger tree companies out here in Phoenix. Worked with the customer service rep team, had a very close relationship with the owner and the general manager of those companies. So really learned like how do these businesses work, especially like, service-based businesses, like how do these businesses function? I've been able to see how business has changed, but also how various businesses operate from different angles. So having that those interactions with like various roles within companies, it's huge, right? And I think that having like that level of empathy maybe, right, is like important when it comes to like understanding how to build a solution, but also implement and encourage change management and approach it lightly with different personalities or get people excited, right? Like when it comes to people that have been waiting for that change to come for a long time.
And you mentioned, I mean, the business and one thing I wouldn't, your business knowledge, you've been around EOS and some of these other frameworks, but, expand on the understanding of business and how you're using that in the solutions you're defining and just ensuring customer success for people that are working with you.
Every business essentially like fundamentally works the same way, right? Like you have leads, you have clients, you have opportunities, you have agreements, you have the sales, part of the process, then you have post sales, right? So like every sales cycle is fundamentally the same. Especially when it comes to like service businesses, it's an easy one, right? It's like when you can repeat solutions for businesses, I think that that's extremely beneficial because it's the experience is embedded, but also the solutions become a little bit more repeatable from a productization side of things. I think like having a firm grasp on like just business in general is helpful, but understanding that business niche is important, right? And you're able to kind of frame yourself as like the expert within the industry. But and you're able to easily define like the gaps, right? Like you already know what to look for when you're getting into that business. And when you see like a KPI that's doing something that it shouldn't be doing, then you have a pretty good idea as to the root cause. And it could be processes, it could be people, it could be the systems, right? But I think that experience has really helped me to provide faster solutions for clients and if they're not prepackaged already, right? It's like
Yeah.
one of those two.
Now, talk about it from because you were in the lawn care business for years, right? And looking back at that time, how much would it have helped to have someone like you as an outsider helping to drive the organization forward, right? There's so much value in just bringing in that outsider perspective to your organization. So, from your experience of being in the weeds and struggling to get things moving and have success, like the value of that outsider perspective who understands your business and can actually help drive you forward exponentially faster.
I think about, even if I were to work with myself, right? Like 2017, I think there'd be two sides to that coin. Like number one, it could be a big challenge, right? And the other, like I would have been a huge benefit to that other version of myself, right? The challenge of my role is that if a company does have a marketing director or somebody in that seat already, like it's very easy for them to push back on me, right? Because the more I get into the systems and understand exactly what's happening, like we push the data to the surface, right? And we create that visibility. And that makes people uncomfortable sometimes, as you and I have both experienced in the past. Like people don't always want to show you their cards. That's a sign of a healthy organization and a sign of a healthy C-suite team is like, are all your people on the same page? Like, are we transparent? Like, are we being
Hmm.
truthful with one another? And if not, then you're going to have a very corrosive C-suite team that's going to ultimately impact your company. So I think, I'm very sensitive to that, especially if I am working with chief marketing officers and really any employee that I'm working with on any team with any company. Like, I'm here to make you look better. And in doing that, like, I'm going to try to make your life a little bit easier so you don't have all these redundant things that you're doing every single day. We'll streamline that for you, but let's tear down these walls where we're like concerned about our job every day. Cause that's like, even with the advent of AI, it's like everybody's afraid of like losing their job. And I don't think that that's what technology is here to do. It's, you and I have discussed this. It's like to elevate the people within their organization so that they
Yeah.
can spend their time doing more things that are of value to the company.
Let's talk about, in reflecting on that, kind of mentioned you working with the older version of you. With that older version of you, like what's changed in Rob? That older version might not have received the help as much as he would now. Like, take us through kind of that transformation and what really kind of changed in your mindset as you look to help more organizations.
Yeah, I think it's fear. I think confidence comes with tenure to one respect, right? But also, I think the other part of it is like, if I were to lose everything tomorrow, like, would I be afraid of that? I wouldn't be afraid of that because I know I can rebuild. I've done it before. I'm able to face adversity fairly well, but also I know my worth as an individual, and also like I'm able to separate that, right? Like my professional life from my personal life, which I think is really important too. It's like from a professional standpoint, I know what I'm capable of and I'm excited. Like if like a client like points something out, which is maybe like a like underperformance on my part or something that I could be doing better. Like I'm excited to solve that problem internally
Yeah.
for my
It's
own
like, oh,
company.
thank you. Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah.
letting me know. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. That's just an important way to approach business in general. It's like business is business, right? It's kind of a game, It's fun. You can make it fun or you can make it horrible if you're not doing what you love to do.
So how with AI, what have you seen changing in your role in how, clients are engaging with you? We're kind of at the inflection point here of what's going to be possible with AI. So what have you started to see and what do you imagine we'll continue to see as this becomes more and more adopted?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about this a little bit earlier today. I think automation is kind of like the start of AI, right? It's like machines can do something and basically backfill what people don't need to be doing every day, right? And I think AI is really a backfill to automation, right? It's like now let's take the nuance and a little bit more logic and allow a machine to kind of determine what that looks like with strict parameters and guardrails. Obviously there's a lot of fear around AI, and I think there should be. Technology is moving at light speed, and the wrong technology in the wrong hands can be extremely destructive. I started working with AI like as soon as like OpenAI, ChatGPT dropped, right? And have sort of like, really paid attention to the industry as it's grown. My perspective on it is make sure that you are building kind of a shell, building those guardrails around whatever it is that you're creating. And then also ensuring that you have a way to like validate what's happening on the other side of it. And I think that's really been one of the most important parts of how I've been kind of approaching it and really migrating everything to, like Postgres, right? Like building like AI on top of these like back end platforms so that there are those checks and balances in place to where, you can easily go back and unwind things that you've done historically and also deploying new things faster. That's kind of been my approach lately to how I've been working with AI.
When you say validate too, I think it's important to like, that's where, getting those engagements with the people in their organization, there's almost more of them needed, right? With AI, right? Like there's more human validation needed and you can't always validate what their organization says is true.
Beyond that, like you want an AI employee for your business, okay? And if you tell me to shut it off like right away, like it's almost like firing an employee that you just onboarded. It's like you wouldn't do that. You would like be like, "Hey, what's the problem? Like let's figure this out," right? But I think that people are very reactive to technology now. It's like, it's not doing exactly what I want to do. Like, let's abandon it altogether. And it's like, you're setting yourself back if that's the approach that you're taking, right? Like, we need to be forward thinking about some of this stuff and figure out, like, is this the best solution? But also, like, identifying an actual issue specifically and then doing the problem solving to get through that.
It's the same thing as a human, right? If you're going to have successful employee, it still requires defining a role, establishing metrics and validating whether or not it's done. And I think the challenge with some of these small businesses, they aren't doing that on the human side. So when they go to do it on the AI side and it doesn't work, and then they just shut it off. Well, like with their employees, they don't just fire them. They're just paying employees to do stuff that they don't even know what they're doing. It's definitely interesting to see almost the similarities, right, between humans and AI, right? Like AI is a role within your organization. It's just not a human role, but humans need to be able to oversee it. Oh, great. Well, so yeah, tell us what's next for you. What are some of the things that you're working on? And you mentioned the new entity you're starting up, but yeah, what do things look like for you over the next couple of years?
A couple of years might be a little too far out, but launching, thank you for Calling.ai this month. From a marketing perspective, I see a gap of those businesses that are doing like 500,000 to a million to beyond that. And, if I can bring you leads to your doorstep, but you can't convert them to an estimate, right, or an appointment, then that's a problem, right? And we can't grow. And so we're providing not only AI agentic voice assistants that can book estimate appointments, answer questions about the company, and also transfer calls to the appropriate
Humans.
person based off of
Yeah.
emergency services, right?
Yeah.
But also we're offering virtual assistants, remote US based virtual assistants as well, that are trained on the most popular home services CRMs, and they're ready to get out of the gate, right? So you don't have to worry about W2 employee. You don't have to worry about the downtime with training. If they're sick, we can get somebody in place for them, right? So there's a lot of the most common things that you face with having somebody on payroll that we're alleviating either through virtual assistants or through AI. And so I'm very excited about that side of the business. I don't think any other marketing agency that I know of is offering that as a bespoke service to clients. I love the space, and I'm just eager to kind of get moving on that.
Awesome. And then for any people watching, where do they find you, contact you? What best way to reach out?
At automationinvasion.com on Instagram. We have, and Twitter, got automationinvasion.com website. Thank you for Calling.ai website, and also Lawn Landscape Made Simple website as well.
All right. Well, Rob, thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your experience and knowledge and wisdom. And it's great to connect and great to see the success that you're having.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.